What would happen if they really
I deserve it, but they will never give it to me.
What would happen, sir? What would happen?
Normalization to go forward. What needs to happen for normalization in Saudi Arabia?
Well, we're going to see, and we're dealing with a lot of people, and we have steps to go yet, as you know, and maybe those steps go forward, and maybe they don't. We're dealing with a very complex group of people, situation and people. But we have the right man, we have the right leader of Israel. He's done a great job, and we've been friends for a long time, and we do a great job also. And I think we have a combination that's very unbeatable, actually.
Can I ask what would happen, Mr. President, what would happen if you hear...
Wait a minute. Wait. Where is that person? Where's that person coming from? Come on, go. You go.
What would happen if you'll hear from the Israeli side today that they're not willing to go through with the deal to get all the hostages back home and finish the war?
We'll see what happens. Whatever happens, we'll be prepared to handle the situation.
Are the Saudis demanding a Palestinian
deal,
state?
Mr. President.
No.
Are the Saudis demanding a Palestinian state?
No, they're not. No.
Are they demanding a path towards a Palestinian state or any other recognition?
Everybody's
of that
demanding one thing. You know what it is? Peace. We want peace. We want people to stop being killed. But everybody's demanding one thing. Very simple, peace. And he wants peace also.
Mr. President, do you think it's politically possible in Israel to get this deal done until the end?
To get the deal done?
Yeah.
Sure.
I mean, is it politically
Why wouldn't a deal get
possible?
done? A deal can get done. We'll see what happens. We're dealing with very complicated people. But a deal can absolutely get done.
President
An Israeli strike on Iran.
We'll see what happens.
President Trump, I have one for Prime Minister Netanyahu. We have heard Joe Biden and Donald Trump take credit for the hostage and ceasefire deal. Who do you think deserves more credit?
I think President Trump added great force and powerful leadership to this effort. I appreciate it. He sent a very good emissary. He's helped it along. And, I'll just tell you, I'm happy that they're here. And I'm sure the President is happy that they're here. And I would think that's about enough.
Prime Minister, what about Elizabeth Surkov, the Israeli hostage held in Iraq?
What about the Israeli press taking a press conference in Israel and not in Washington?
We would love to take a press conference to interview Prime Minister Netanyahu. A few more questions. Prime Minister Netanyahu, do you support going forward with this deal and getting all the hostages out?
I support getting all the hostages out and meeting all our war goals that include destroying Hamas's military and governing capabilities and making sure that Gaza never poses a threat to Israel again.
Are you willing?
All three.
Are you willing
And
to
those
agree? Are you
things
willing
go
to agree?
together?
Are you willing
Can you
to agree
promise
to
to the
Trump's
families
vision
that you
to
do
bring all
everything
the
to get the
hostages
hostages out?
I think that I should
One at
talk
a
to
time.
President
One
Trump,
So
okay?
I'll ask, do you agree with Trump's vision of getting all the hostages back home, even if it means to end the war?
Well, I'm not sure that you articulated correctly what the President's vision is. You can ask, he can speak for himself. He does that very, very well. I have my own views, 3 goals, not 1, not 2, 3 goals, and I will meet all 3 goals. I think the President can help enormously. He brings fresh thinking. Fresh thinking.
Terrorists who murdered hundreds of people who listed their home as the part of the deal.
It's a horrible thing. We can't forget it. I'll never forget it, and you can't forget it. And some people want to put it out of their memory, but we're not going to ever let that happen. It was a horrible day, October 7th. That was a horrible period of time. And a lot of people like to pretend it didn't happen. It happened. It's a big group of people that like to pretend it didn't happen, like the Holocaust didn't happen. Same mindset. No, we're going to get this thing wrapped up, and we're going to get it done. We're also dealing, I think, very successfully with Russia, Ukraine. We're going to hopefully get that one done at some point in the not-too-distant future. That's a complex problem also. But we solve problems. When I left, we had no problem. There was no Ukraine and Russia fighting. There was no October 7th. There was nothing. And some very poor leadership led to a lot of problems and a lot of death. And it's a shame, but we'll put it out. We'll put out the fires. We have a lot of fires, but we'll put them out.
Mr. President, why do you still support the Palestinian state
like the peace plan you presented in January 2020. Is this plan still on the table?
Well, a lot of plans change with time, and a lot of death has occurred since I left and now came back. This death occurred not while I was here, but while somebody else was here. It shouldn't have happened. They shouldn't have allowed it to happen. It would have never happened, and that includes Russia, Ukraine would have never happened. Not even a little bit, not even a chance. But now we are faced with a situation that's different, in some ways better and in some ways worse. But we're faced with a very complex and difficult situation, but we'll solve the problem.
Mr. President, the refugees you get from Gaza, out of Gaza, if not Jordan, Egypt, what other countries you think might accept Palestinians from Gaza?
Well, I think Jordan and Egypt will. I know they've spoken about it with you, and they say they're not going to accept. I say they will. But I think other countries will accept also. I think that Gaza maybe is a demolition site right now. If you look at Gaza, there's hardly a building standing, and the ones that are going to collapse. You can't live in Gaza right now, and I think we need another location. I think it should be a location that's going to make people happy. You look over the decades, it's all death in Gaza. This has been happening for years. It's all death. If we can get a beautiful area to resettle people permanently in nice homes and where they can be happy and not be shot, not be killed, not be knifed to death like what's happening in Gaza. And right now you have in Gaza a very dangerous situation in terms of explosives all over the place, in terms of tunnels that nobody knows who's in the tunnel. The whole thing is a mess. And I think that if we can resettle, and I believe we can do it in areas where the leaders currently say no. I mean, I've been saying that with Mexico, having to do with the border and all of the things, and you saw what happened, 10,000 soldiers, and they're going to do a good job. I really believe that, and I believe Canada's going to do a good job also. They said the same thing, and then they did something much different than what you were hearing. This is a very, very difficult situation, but we're going to get it solved. I don't think people should be going back to Gaza. I think that Gaza has been very unlucky for them. They've lived like hell. They lived like you're living in hell. Gaza is not a place for people to be living. And the only reason they want to go back, and I believe this strongly, is because they have no alternative. What's the alternative? Go where? There's no other alternative. If they had an alternative, they'd much rather not go back to Gaza and live in a beautiful alternative that's safe.
Mr. President,
Would Palestinians have the right to return to Gaza if they left while the rebuilding was happening?
It would be my hope that we could do something really nice, really good, where they wouldn't want to return. Why would they want to return? The place has been hell. It's been one of the meanest, toughest places on earth. And right now, I've seen every picture from every angle, better than if I were there. And nobody can live there. You can't live there. So if we can build them through massive amounts of money supplied by other people, very rich nations, and they're willing to supply it. If we can build something for them in one of the countries, and it could be Jordan, and it could be Egypt, it could be other countries, and you could build 4 or 5 or 6 areas. It doesn't have to be one area, but you take certain areas and you build really good quality housing, like a beautiful town, like someplace where they can live and not die. Because Gaza is a guarantee that they're going to end up dying. The same thing's going to happen again. It's happened over and over again, and it's going to happen again as sure as you're standing there, Peter. So I hope that we could do something where they wouldn't want to go back. Who would want to go back? They've experienced nothing but death and destruction.
If Egypt and Jordan tell you no, what will you do then?
Well, I don't think they're going to tell me no.
Mr. President,
I don't think they're going to tell me. I think they're going to tell Biden no, and I think they're going to tell other people no.
So you think it will happen at the end?
I think there's a good chance, yeah.
How
I'd like
many
to see it
people are you thinking about?
All of them. I mean, we're talking about probably 1.7 million people, 1.7 million, maybe 1.8 million. But I think all of them. I think they'll be resettled in areas where they can live a beautiful life and not be worried about dying every day.
Wait.
Wait.
What are you doing?
Mr.
Mr. President,
Yeah.
do you support building settlements, Jewish settlements back in Gaza in the next years?
Say it.
Building settlements, Jewish settlements back in Gaza in the next year. Do you support this idea?
I don't see it happening. It's too dangerous for people. Nobody can go there. It's too dangerous. Nobody wants to be there. Warriors don't want to be there. Soldiers don't want to be there. How can you have people go back? You're saying go back into Gaza now? The same thing's going to happen. It'll only be death. The best way to do it is you go out and you get beautiful, open areas with the sunlight coming through, and
No,
you
that's
build
not what I meant.
something nice. And they are not going to want to. They are not going to want to go back to Gaza.
Prime Minister Netanyahu, what is your message to the families of the hostages that look at this deal, that are worried that this deal won't go through? What do you say to them at this moment?
Same message I said from the beginning of the war. We'll get them out, get them back. We got over 70%, close to 75% of the people who everybody believed will not get out. We got them in successive deals, and most recently with the help of President Trump. We're not going to give up on any of them, and we're not going to give up on our other war aims. Hamas is not going to be in Gaza, and we're going to get everyone back.
And you would not have.
Prime Minister, how optimistic are you about reaching phase 2 of the ceasefire? How optimistic are you about that happening?
Well, we're going to try. That's one of the reasons, one of the things we're going to talk about here. And if we, you know, when Israel and the United States work together, and President Trump and I work together, you know, the chances go up a lot. It's when we don't work together, Israel and the United States don't work together, that creates problems. When the other side sees daylight between us, and occasionally in the last few years, to put it mildly, they saw daylight, then it's more difficult. When we cooperate, chances are good.
Once and for all.
Say it.
Now that Iran is so weak, isn't it the right time to hit their nuclear facilities once and for all?
So you say Iran is so weak. I appreciate you saying that. They're not weak. They're very strong right now, and we're not going to allow them to have a nuclear weapon. It's very simple. You know, I signed a very strong proclamation. Iran was in big trouble when I left. They were broke. They didn't have money for Hamas. They didn't have any money for Hezbollah. You had no problem. October 7th could have never happened. When I left, October 7th could have never happened. And frankly, Russia and Ukraine, as I said, could never have happened. They became very strong very fast. They sold massive amounts of oil to China and everybody else who would not buy the oil when I was president, because we said, don't buy the oil. And they became very rich very quickly. But they're not weak. They're not weak. They're strong. Doesn't mean they won't be weak. But you know what? We just don't want them to have a nuclear weapon. They can't have a nuclear
The
weapon.
Prime Minister, sorry, Mr. President, the Prime Minister wants you to strike Iran. That's what he wants.
You don't know what he wants. What do you know about anything? Go ahead.
But is that option on the table?
Yes, please.
President Trump, is that option on the table?
You're not just talking about Jordan and Egypt.
No, could be other places too.
So in the Gulf,
There are many people that have reached out, many countries, many leaders of countries that have reached out that would like to participate in that. Doesn't have to be Jordan and Egypt, but I think it would be also them.
Mr. President, your relationship with Mr. Netanyahu knew ups and downs. How would you describe it?
No, I think it's mostly ups.
Mr. President, what about the Palestinian Authority? Should we rule Gaza because Gaza will be empty?
What?
The Palestinian Authority, can it rule Gaza? What do you think?
Well, it's had a pretty hard time, wouldn't you say? I'd say it's had a pretty bad time of it. Okay.
Mr. President, Qatar has you've criticized in the past as a funder of terrorism, so as the Prime Minister, do you think they're part of the solution or part of a problem moving forward?
I think they're trying to help. Qatar
Yep.
is absolutely trying to help. I know them very well, and they're doing everything they can. Very tough situation, but they're absolutely trying to help. Okay, thank you very much, everybody. Thank you. Thank you.
Press, let's go. Come on, guys. Thank you. Have a great day. Thank you, guys. See you soon.
Right this way. Thank you, press.
All right. right, so a beautiful shot there in the Oval Office. You know, you saw the Vice President, J.D. Vance, just to the President's left there. And some interesting questions back and forth with that Q&A. One of them, President Trump, in a comment saying Gaza is, quote, a demolition site right now, saying neighboring countries, neighboring Arab countries should take in the Palestinians. And then in a question to the Prime Minister, he was asked who should get credit for negotiating recent peace deals with Hamas. And the Prime Minister, Netanyahu, said that he credits President Trump in those efforts. So quite telling some information there in the Oval Office.
Right. And we also had National Security Advisor Michael Waltz behind him with Susie Wiles, the Chief of Staff. So this is something that the entire apparatus of the national security team is surrounding. And of course, the Prime Minister will be meeting with Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth tomorrow and staying through Washington until Saturday as well. So I'm sure it will be a very hospitable and energetic meeting, as we're seeing a live shot right outside of the West Wing there at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue.
Exactly, as it's 4:13 right now Eastern time, getting ready, actually 5:13 Eastern time, as we get ready to see President Trump and the Prime Minister head over to the East Room after they're done with their private meeting, talking about all sorts of foreign policy, of course. So the East Room will be the major kind of speeches by both leaders, and then there will be a more formal setting for a Q&A with some of the reporters there. Of course, this is something being seen across the United States and various parts of Europe right now, including when you look at various networks in England, also, of course, in Israel. So a lot of people watching and hearing what President Trump is saying, what the Prime Minister is saying, as this is live as well, right here on Right Side Broadcasting Network. Anywhere there is an internet connection, pretty much out there. So thanks so much for live streaming in with us as we get ready to go back to the White House. So to your point about the Secretary of Defense tomorrow, interesting that the leader of another country, in this case the Prime Minister of Israel, is meeting with Secretary Hegseth tomorrow just to talk some more about hopefully a peaceful situation moving forward.
Right, we just saw him down at the border assessing the situation there as well. And this is something that, to your point, Matthew, the entire Western world is watching, if not the entire world, how to address the atrocities that took place on October 7th of 2023 when innocent civilians were attacked and many taken hostage, whether that be Israeli citizens or even American citizens, and many of those hostages now returning, and how to move forward with this entire situation. President Trump stating that he doesn't think people will want to return to Gaza because it has become such a terrible place to live, and that he believes Jordan and Egypt, among other Arab nations, might take in the Palestinians.
You know, it seems like so many biblical things happening in general. Not saying today's meeting was biblical or anything, but still, like, you know, the Palestinians, okay, where are they going to go now? Gaza is destroyed, according to the president. We've seen the pictures there. It is a demolition site. It looks awful there. So where can people actually live? Will the Arab countries like Egypt or Jordan or others take in the Palestinians? What will happen? Will there be a peace deal? There's a lot going on right now, and we're right here covering it for you on RSBN Live. I'm Matthew Alvarez alongside Robert McNeely, and as soon as we see a live feed from inside the White House, we'll return to 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. And before we go to one of our next sponsors, I was speaking or via text here with someone that is connected with Jair Bolsonaro, the former president of Brazil. The reason why I bring that up, just recently on Truth Social, Jair Bolsonaro is now on Truth Social, which is a great move for that great leader, even though right now, of course, he's not the president of Brazil, but the people wanted him as president. He is like MAGA all over again in a great way, instead making Brazil great again. So seeing if I can get Ricardo Martins, you may remember, he's been on the broadcast before. And it'd be great to hear his take on even this meeting today, but also the fact that, you know, it's great to see a move like that, even to a social platform like Truth Social. Some of the great sponsors we have here at the network include
freeze that it meant for the tariffs for Canada and
well,
Mexico.
We'll see what happens. I mean, well, there's a short-term freeze with Mexico, and, as you know, and with Canada. But they've agreed to be very, very strong on the border, stronger than they ever were by far.
Trump was also asked about the retaliatory tariffs that China imposed on American goods overnight, calling them fine and predicting that the U.S. will do very well against China. Now, in Beijing, officials announced a slate of new tariffs and other retaliatory measures, including a 15% tariff on coal, liquefied natural gas, and other commodities, a 10% tariff level on crude oil, agricultural machinery, pickup trucks, and other goods there, a Chinese antitrust investigation into Google, and export controls on tungsten and other metals, along with rare minerals as well. Tungsten, Melissa, is used for everything from light bulbs to microwave ovens, but it's also used in armor plating and armor-piercing projectiles, so that restriction there could, over time, impact U.S. military supply chains. Back over to you.
All right, Eamon, thank you. Eamon Javers. So, Savita, how are the markets taking all of this?
Well, I mean, we've had a positive start to the year. I think there still is a lot of liquidity out there looking for a home. I think there's still a lot of cash on sidelines. We still get the question, my client has a lot of cash. Should they buy now or wait for a better entry point, which means there's probably not going to be a better entry point until we stop getting that question. Look, I think that it's tricky right now because where we are is an environment where the uncertainty is high. The other factor that we need to think about is, are our allies going to continue to trade with us if we're playing hardball with them right now? So I think that's the other kind of longer term ramification here. I mean, I think that so far what we've seen is that U.S. corporates are actually in a position where they can handle tariffs, the extra tariffs, reasonably well, especially for China, because they've already had this learning curve since 2018. Half of the economic activity that we used to do with China is now being done with Mexico and Canada. So that's the bad news, is that it's been transported to other areas that are starting to be in the crosshairs. I think that, from an inflationary perspective, this is potentially negative. We've dialed back our Fed call to no cuts this year. We're not talking about hikes yet. So no cuts this year. But I think that where we are is an environment where you want to sort of prepare yourself for upside pressure to rates, to inflation, to the idea that we don't have an all clear on policy decisions until maybe, closer to the second half. And that could stymie corporate planning, et cetera. What I would play, the easiest theme to kind of invest in with Trump 2.0 is deregulation. And I don't think that gets as much play as it should, because that is a theme where it's easier for him to get a lot done. It's not as negative for the economy. It's actually positive for productivity. It's positive for rates. It's positive for growth. So I feel like the lens on tariffs is obviously that's where the headlines are right now, but there are a lot of other ways to think about policy changes and how to invest to make money.
What is that deregulation trade? Is it financials? Because that seems like the easiest, and we've already seen the lift in financials on the back of the expectation of deregulation.
Yeah, but what's interesting, even in financials, if you look at the stocks that are most crowded by professional investors, they're private equity and regionals, or private credit and regionals. The larger banks are still underweight. And I was surprised to see that data in our latest run, because I would have expected to see this huge, bid in the most regulated areas. So it's kind of surprising to see that positioning is still very overweight the sectors and the areas that have less to gain, maybe more on M&A activity or other facets.
Coming up, earnings season in full swing. Shares of Chipotle, Snap, and AMD all on the move after reporting the numbers, moving those names next. And speaking of results, shares of Merck plunging on theirs, the stock sinking more than 9%. What China has to do with the drop and why it's having such an impact on the company's outlook. Don't go anywhere. Fast Money is back in 2.